Hi, folks. This is a tarot reading for Pisces, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant for the month of February 2019. And Pisces has an extra card because when I was pulling this final position here for this part of the spread, these cards fell out together as though they were one and the same card, and so I could not ignore them. That would, in my opinion, be bad tarot practice, and it would not be heeding the omens too. So Pisces gets an extra card, perhaps much to the chagrin of the remaining 11 signs. But who knows? Next time it could be you. So anyway, moving on, you're represented by the Mother of Cups reversed and looking towards the Nine of Swords with the Three of Swords behind, reversed. This is kind of a precarious position. The Mother cards are all very like grounded, sort of powerful cards but they tend to hoard that power, right? They don't really use it. They have it, but they are obsessed with it or ruled by it very often is kind of the deal. In classical decks, they look at the object of their suite, right? They're looking at it. Whereas the kings look away from it. The kings are now using it instead of being obsessed by it or hoarding it or accumulating it. So there's some major emotional crisis that is potentially happening for you, mental emotional crisis, perhaps. This is a pretty difficult card. Generally speaking, it shows a lot of emotional stagnation and gunk and upheaval, and this is like the card of things actually decaying and falling apart. So we kind of have, generally speaking, a rough time, a rough road ahead, but obviously a great opportunity to let this die, because I think the Nine in this situation is coming along to let this actually die. It's almost like all these creatures here that are sort of decaying and falling apart are coming out of this bloody sort of twine or whatever this is, It's very kind of sci-fi stuff going on here, But I think what's happening is you're sort of being forced to interface with the results of whatever you've been dealing with emotionally, which has not been so harmonious. Basically, you're being forced to interface with the inevitability of dissolution, the void, in a sense, right? All things must die, memento mori in Latin. So this doesn't mean you're going to die or that people are going to die, but on some level, it is a negative emotional pattern that is either being forced to end, that needs to end, or that you're, the results of not interfacing with it are kind of madness, in a sense, grief and madness and chaos, right? If you're not really dealing with it, right? This is the result. So there's a lot going on here. It's multi-layered. We have the Fool, which anytime it shows up, things are really open to drastic and sudden change. So the themes of this month for you may not be so set in stone either. So just keep that into account as you listen to this basic reading. So yeah, in the past card, though, as the Fool is in the past position, there is perhaps some beginning that was hampered or kind of delayed because of the past. The Fool's looking toward the past, and the Son of Swords Son of Wands, is looking toward the past, right? So on some level, there's what is the influences of the past are basically that there's all this energy and power and strength that is being sapped from you because you're dwelling on the past too much, or you're contemplating the past too much, or you're still living in some past type habits, patterns of thought, patterns of feeling, and so on, patterns of identity, right? It's the Wands card, identity, very much emphasized, that are sort of keeping you bound and chained in a sense. Like you don't have access to this energy, right? You don't have access to it. But I'm going to jump around a bit in this spread, right? In the future, the advice about dealing with the future positions here, which are Ace of Wands and Three of Cups, actually a very nice kind of juxtaposition, even though it's water and fire. I don't think there's any major problem with that at the moment. I think the advice is, basically be willing to begin anew, right? Be willing to nurture that seedling of the future, like whatever it is that you're wanting to manifest about your future, whatever it is that you're trying to go towards in the future, right? Let go of the past, be willing to just restart, kind of a thing, like restart from scratch. And, don't be afraid to rely upon like family and friendships and whoever and whatever is supportive in your life. Like on some level, community is very helpful for you, right? Being perhaps isolated is not so helpful. And the Nine of Wands here reversed is kind of a tendency to be isolated, to feel like, the journey is so far, it's so close, but it's so far away at the same time. You're nearing the end of the journey, but it feels close, but it also feels far away at the same time. And this is perhaps because, you're trying to do too much. Too much is at stake, too much is, you're doing it too alone, so to speak. You're thinking about things in terms of, I have to do all of this myself. But you clearly have some friends that you can, tap for help and advice and things like that. And don't think you have to do everything by yourself. That is the myth of this culture we have, especially in the United States where I am, much to my chagrin in many, many respects. But no, don't get me wrong. I love the state I live in, but my point is, it's frustrating for me as well, guys, because this country has this myth that they perpetuate that everyone's an individual, that everyone is just supposed to make it on their own, that they're supposed to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, that there's no such thing as help, right? Everyone's a self-made person. And, a self-made man, actually, forget women, right? That's very much our country's ethos, right? And also manifest destiny. Just take whatever you want. Like, it's yours. Just do whatever you want. Just, fuck everyone else. So unfortunately, this is a myth. No one has ever been highly successful without great help from other people, without great fortune, without great support, oftentimes from a wife who's behind the scenes, like J.S. Bach, for example. I believe one or both of his wives wrote down or copied a lot of his music, right? Because he had to compose. For those of you who don't know, J.S. Bach was a very amazing, one of the best composers from Europe to ever live. He lived in predominantly the 18th century. And one of the things he had to do is he had to compose like a new cantata for church, because he was a church director. He was an organist and choir director. That's how he made his bread and butter. So he had to compose like a new set of pieces every week for mass. And I think he was a Lutheran. So his cantatas are no small thing. They are very profound pieces of music. They're multi-movement, multi-layered, and so on, vocal parts, instrumental parts. He had to do this every week, right? And presumably he had to make copies of the music for everyone that was going to be performing the music. So I assume, and I don't know for sure, but I assume that, his wife, or the one I'm thinking of that did help him do a lot of copying, she probably was the one doing a lot of that copying, I mean, there's just, and not to mention taking care of all his kids. He had something like 17 or 19 kids, and not all of them survived, but he was not doing all this stuff on his own. Plus he composed like thousands of pieces of music. So anyway, just one of many, many, many examples of the behind every great man, there's a great woman. And where was I going with it? Oh yeah, the point is you don't have to you don't have to feel so alone in your journey, right? And as you begin to nurture the seeds of the future and leave behind these old attitudes that were not really serving you, right? I do think that not only will there be this abundant, beautiful energy to propel you forward, right? But you'll also have a return to some more primal kind of energy here in the Fool card. Now, the Future card here too is kind of like a dissolution of things because it's reversed. So it's like really what you're getting back to at the end of all your hard work and journeying is actually a new beginning, right? So it's that theme again. I just wanted to point that out, right? You're really headed back to a more innocent, primal place of being where you can sort of begin again, begin anew, and perhaps burn away the dross that has accumulated around you and become once again sort of a free agent. The present is very auspicious for you this month, which is nice, even though the past is a little inharmonious and the future is a little jumbled and whatnot. The present for the month, meaning not just the gift you received, sorry, but like the predominant space of the month, right, is one of on some level wholeness and completion with the world, right? Really having everything you need. And it's interesting too, because the Fool and the world juxtapose one another. They sort of stand outside the cycle of basically you have 10 arcanum, and then you have like the Fool on one end and the world on the other. So they're kind of like alpha and omega, right? So I think that if you can, basically this is like if you can realign things like I've been talking about to move forward into the future and based on new patterns, right? You will have some profound completion in your life. You will have some profound achievement or wholeness or whatever, in whatever you're doing. And below this is the very auspicious Six of Wands, which is a very empowering card. And it's interesting because we have 6 and 9 here too. So the 6 is, again, being, it's, you will be freed from some sort of darkness or crisis or whatever. You are emerging into a more powerful place, right? And perhaps what's really going on is naturally here you are leaving behind these like kind of past stagnant energies, things that didn't really work out, that kind of were sapping a lot of strength. You're just leaving them behind, and you are re-emerging, right? You are headed towards something greater, and it's kind of all this is very much in alignment, I think, overall. You may have to go through again a small crisis of some kind in the future, another identity crisis or something, but it can leave you with an ability to really start again from a pure place. And finally, the Magician card, which sort of ties everything together and sums everything up, says, again, it's card number 1, right? The Fool and the Magician both kind of pertain to number 1 in a way, even though the Fool is 0. So the Magician is like saying, okay, this month, really become who you have always been, okay? Go back to who you were in the beginning before you got confused by the various components of the world, right? Before your thoughts, deeds, I'm messing this up, sorry. The 4 elements, like, I'm thinking thought, word, and deed, but it's more like before you, started worrying about money, before you became emotionally entangled in stuff, before you became maybe a bit paranoid or confused, and before you overly identified yourself with various things, go back to the beginning and just make reality in your own vision, take control of things, right? Really take control of things and make things the way you want them to be. What is your ideal vision of reality? Live that. Just be that, live that, do that, okay? That's what this is about. And the Magician, I think, it says too that you can do this. You can make this a reality. So it's an intense month for sure. There's some major there's some major crises and difficulties to overcome with these two nines, right? And the juxtaposition of these two threes is like feeling unloved, feeling lonely versus, feeling friendship and joy and harmony and stuff like that. We have, the beginning and the end coming together on some level, right? It's like you're almost there, but you're still hanging on to some seed from a long time ago, to some beginning, some ancient thing, ancient by this life. We're not getting into past lives here. Don't mystify it any more than it needs to be. But the point being is, like, if you're obsessed with your innocence or something like that, that you feel like you lost a long time ago, right? It's stuff like this that's going to hold you back, basically. So, I don't know, pretty cool, pretty empowering month. Not without its challenges, but, good luck with everything. And I think that's the end of this reading. So if you have, additional questions and whatnot, and you want a full reading, check out my website. Please hit like, share this, subscribe to my YouTube, check me out on Patreon and Facebook as well. And otherwise, have a great month. Okay.